Hello and welcome to This Week in History with Will.
I'm Will.
And me, Mike.
I'm Mike.
Where Will teaches me stuff about history that I don't know and I learn.
Yep, and he tells funny things and I tell funny things. We try to make it a fun experience for everybody, even when talking about sometimes not fun stuff.
And don't oversell it. Today we are...
Said try.
Today, this is November 18th, and this is November 18th as well. We are discussing the Council of Clermont.
Yes.
Before that, though, last week, you want to check out our previous episodes. We have the Montezuma meeting Cortez.
Mm-hmm.
That's, if I find that on my Facebook page. But in this thing, you can find our YouTube page, which has a bunch of our videos there.
Yep.
7 or 8 of them, I believe.
Yeah, yeah, it's getting up there. I actually I've been meaning to get on there and
Look at
convert them. Well, no, I watched them.
Okay.
I try not to. I hate watching myself. I don't like that. But I want to convert them into just audio files because some people, specifically my younger brother, have said I like to just have it be an audio file, so I can just put that on and listen to the background while I'm doing other stuff.
Well, you're welcome to do that as well.
So that's a job for me to do.
That is a job for you to
And
do.
when I get that set up, but I like the idea of having a bunch of them to throw up on there to, people want to binge.
Sure.
Want all the history at once.
Wonder if I should cut all this part out on the edit.
No. I like this because then let us know, people, if you want that. See?
Okay, good. All right.
There we go.
So
Let us know.
I've been catching up on getting them from Facebook to YouTube. It's a little bit of a edit and a thing. So I'll get these up soon enough. I'm only one behind now. So
You worked hard. I can't do that. I'm not good at the. I'd need the file and the. I just do the reading and the study.
Will has 1 hour to explain to me
1 hour.
now the history, the reason why we're talking about the Council of Clermont, which I did look up is not just one day.
It was several days.
Well, so he's got 1 hour to figure that out.
Yeah.
Begin talking, Will.
So, our bit of history begins before the actual event, as always. What is this whole Council of Clermont? So we'll start by saying what the council was. So, in 1095, on November 18th, the Council of Clermont was convened in the French town of Clermont. By,
Is it pronounced Clermont?
I think it's Clermont. It's Clermont. Welcome to Clermont. I was looking for it. It's right in the middle of modern day France. Like, if you could draw lines, of latitude and just go, where's the middle?
So you make a map of France,
there.
put it on a pin, you can
Spin it, and it would be pretty balanced. You could run it like a record.
All right.
The topography makes sounds. Probably. Dun, 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 dun.
I'm sure the French organized it that way.
I think they specifically
All their
wrote that.
topiary gardens and such.
All the hills and the vineyards of France.
We'll discuss front lawns and French people later.
Yeah.
I have opinions on that.
I have opinions too. Do you know the lawn is the first line of defense for a castle?
Ooh.
Yeah, that's where it comes from.
Anyway, we're at Clermont.
So, Clermont. And the Pope at the time was Pope Urban II.
The Pope at a time.
The Pope at a time. Now, unlike some of the other popes we've talked about,
I'm sorry, I missed it because I was making the funny.
Pope at a time
Was
Urban II.
Urban II.
Urban II. He was born in 1035, lived to 1099, so he didn't live much longer than this. He did not die from anything nefarious.
Oh,
He's
okay.
just that's old for the Middle Ages.
Sure.
And he wasn't considered a terribly radical pope. He wasn't. He's not one of those guys where you'd sit there and go, "Murder pope."
What's going on with that?
Like we had that pope last week who was like, who said you didn't like at all. And for fair, was it?
Yeah.
What was his name? Because you wrote it down.
Alexander the Sixth.
Alexander the Sixth, where he said people who aren't Christian aren't people.
Yeah, that's a rough
statement
to
I
make.
don't care. I don't care who you are. That's really objectively just
it's a bad one.
terrible.
Yeah.
This pope didn't do that.
Not bad.
Okay. So he wanted to convene this for a number of reasons. There were some problems in the church. They had a situation called simony, or it might be simony.
Simony?
It's not cinnamon.
Not cinnamon. Okay.
Simony. If you know the proper, sometimes my pronunciation, you can tell when somebody's learned the word by reading it. If you pronounce it wrong.
Yeah. You can also tell we're from Wisconsin.
Yes. Wisconsin.
That's how we pronounce
Bag. Wisconsin itself.
Anyway, simony.
So simony was the practice of selling church offices for coin.
Oh, okay.
So if you wanted, and having a church job's cush deal in the Middle Ages because you had not a lot of options.
What's that other thing you can buy your way to heaven? What's that
Indulgence.
called? Indulgence.
Now, that was not as commonly practiced. Yes, it got a lot worse, and that was one of the things Martin Luther complained about was the selling of indulgences.
It does seem a little
if
sketchy.
I give you money, I don't have to pay any... Because Catholics already have that. They have... pay off your sinful debt, basically, by way of doing penance.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
You know, you go to confession, you say, okay, I did it bad. How do I make it right? And the priest typically gives you a penance.
Yeah.
A lot of times it's, say this many prayers, but in actuality, the concept of doing penance is actually trying to make reparations.
Sure.
So that was a problem, and that probably was a little bit of a problem then, because if you're the local parish priest, you're probably the only guy who can read. You're the only one who knows what the Bible says, because then it was only done in Latin, and only the educated classes could read Latin, and the educated classes were strictly clergy.
Sounds like a good way to abuse power.
Oh, you think? Because even the nobility at the time did not read.
That actually sounds quite similar to the Mormon, the more recent Mormon thing, where John Smith said, "Yeah, I got these books, but I hid them. And only I know how to read them.
I know what they are, and only I know what they say.
Yeah,
and everyone else is like, where are the tablets? You just got to take my word for it."
Strange how religions start that way.
Yep. Well, it's Moses comes down from the mountain. God gave these to me. These 15. 10 commandments.
All right.
Gotta love history of the world. So, priests run everything locally, and there's some abuses of power, and the peasant class usually is not able to complain much.
Okay.
They're tied to the land. They're not much better than slaves. You can farm, but like half of what you make goes to somebody else.
Yeah.
The church gets a tenth of everything you make. It's tithing. It's
Tithing.
very literally
another word.
a thing. So what some clever peasants would do is...
Current day we have you tithing voluntarily.
Right.
This was not as voluntary.
Mandatory.
Okay.
Mandatory. If you didn't, you're a bad Christian, and in these countries, that's like they'll burn you at the stake if they think you're bad enough. There's a heresy, bad, death.
Yeah.
You're either a Christian or a Jew, and that's it. And the Jews were publicly treated very badly in most places. In some places they're tolerated, and in others, just horribly mistreated, which we'll get into because that is a consequence of this little thing.
Here we go.
Indirect consequence, not a direct choice by the Pope.
I will be patient.
So there were some guys who, with tithing, though, they'd be clever. I have to tithe 10% of my milk. Well, rather than priest get it, I'm going to dump it on the altar. Because it's for the church, but not for the church to use. It's for God. God wants my milk. Bold statement. They do it right in front of everybody, too. And the priest couldn't really be mad about it. He's like, but I wanted your milk. But yes, the church has its needs fulfilled. That's a fair thing. So the Pope at the time wants to address some of these issues. The Pope also comes carrying a letter. So we talked about the Romans back in the day. I think that was one of the first things we talked about was the Romans.
Probably.
Same thing. We talked about the death of Pompey. Was one of the
The Romans factor in history about a bit.
They're important-ish.
Yeah.
That's where the Pope lives, is Rome.
That's true.
Well, the Roman Empire mostly fell, but there's a chunk of the Roman Empire that remained. It's called the Eastern Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire.
Oh.
Its capital was in modern-day Istanbul, which was Constantinople.
Wrote a song about it.
They actually did. No, they didn't. But there is a song about Istanbul.
Someone wrote a song about it.
I think They Might Be Giants. They at least made the most famous version if they didn't write it originally, but I think they did.
I believe that's a cover, but yeah. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. It's awesome. Go listen to it after this thing, after we're done. Anyway, so the emperor at the time is this very, very powerful guy. His name is Alexius I Comnenus. Good luck.
Alexius
Alexius I, or
the
I.
first.
Comnenus. That's the Anglicanized version. There'd be a lot of K's in there. And the Comnenian family had just come into power.
Okay.
His dad had kind of seized power. The Byzantine Empire was basically in dire straits. It was kind of going the way of the original Roman Empire. It had been clinging to life.
They're getting their money for nothing.
And
chicks for free.
And it was not great. So they're not doing fantastically. So Alexius comes in and he says, okay, what's going on? How do I fix all this?
Okay. I'm sure it went down just like that.
And it's
What's going on, guys?
It's a Steelers wheel moment of he's got clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right, and he's stuck in the middle with you.
Here I am,
because
the emperor.
back in because he's right on the border. Constantinople is on what's called the Hellespont. It's right in this strait between Asia and Europe.
Okay.
And Constantinople's on one side, and then Asia's on the other side.
Probably why it was a big deal, right?
It was a big deal.
Because it was...
If you wanted to go into the Black Sea, you had to go past there. If you want to go to the Aegean Sea, you had to go past there, and thus into the rest of the Mediterranean. Massive center for trade, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And this city is actually more impressive in a lot of ways than Rome, especially at the time. It was the most advanced city in Europe. It was massive walls that you could ride horsemen across.
Did they have confusing corridors?
Probably Byzantine corridors. Yes. And their politics were Byzantine because they were very complex. And a big part of this you start to see with this Alexius guy, because he comes in, he's got this falling apart empire, and he realizes he has to consolidate things. He's got Turks right across the water.
Yeah.
And also just kind of running through Anatolia and the rest of his land, and also into Greece. He's got the Normans, who we talked about, within the Conqueror's family. They have taken over parts of Italy. They have taken over parts in like what is modern Croatia, and they're cutting into Byzantine land, which is old Greece, bits of Hungary, other chunks.
So all this, by the way, is this in general the Middle East?
West
the
of
Middle
there.
West? The
Middle West. This is Eastern Europe.
Eastern Europe.
Now, modern day Istanbul is Turkey. So, but it's still, I think, technically part. It actually, I think, is the one chunk. It's technically not part of Europe.
Oh,
It's technically considered Asia because they're like everything east of here is Asia.
right.
And everything east of there was considered Asia at the time. They didn't call it the Middle East. It was
Right.
Asia.
I think since we started calling it the Middle East, that's cleared everything up.
Oh yeah, it's gotten real less confusing. No, that's Asia. If it's east of Africa, it's Asia.
Okay.
Or east of Egypt.
Sounds like a mnemonic device I will never...
Just always remember, Egypt is in Africa, and then anything across from this like Suez Canal, that's Asia.
All right.
The Middle East is Asia.
Got it.
Okay. So Turkey's not a country. It's a bunch of nomadic groups. And they are warriors. They're very much like the Turks, like the Huns. They are tough, hardy people that live on the steppes, not the steppes, but like plains.
Yeah, that's kind of pronounced that steeps.
I always pronounce it steppes.
I think
It
one
might
of
be
us.
steeps.
I think you're probably right.
Could be. I don't know.
All right. We'll look it up.
Steppies.
Steppies.
Steppes.
You know the word.
Steppes. It's like tapas, but steppes. But so these are hardy folk, and they're warriors, and they love to fight. They're very good at it, and that's kind of their lifestyle is raiding. So Alexius has to deal with the Turks. He's got to deal with the Normans, who we've talked about before, are warriors. These guys got bored of fighting everybody else, and they're a mixture of French cavalry and Viking raiders put on a horse.
Ooh.
That's Normans. That's what they were.
Right.
So they are all about conquest. They're like as the Vikings evolved, they turned into mounted cavalry conquerors instead of like raiders and farmers.
Yeah.
This is the next evolution. So to deal with the Normans, he pays the Germans 300. What was it? This is a lot of money. I want to get the right. 360,000 pieces of gold.
Gold.
So he's got money. He just doesn't have a really functional army. He says, handle this. So he talks to the King of Germany, King Henry in Germany. He says, you go handle them. And he does. He fights them, so they're too busy fighting themselves to bother him.
Okay.
And then he can crack down on he's dealing with two different Turkish factions. He's got the Seljuk Turks who are to the east.
The light meat and the dark meat.
And then he's got the Pecheneг Turks in Greece. They're like in Thrace, beating people
By
up.
the way, that was a turkey joke. The food animal,
food.
not people.
Not people.
Suddenly, as I was saying that,
That's what I was thinking. I was like, dark meat. No, that's going to be taken.
Thanksgiving is next week.
Next week. Turkey Day.
On my mind.
Yes. It's like Georgia on your mind, but it's Thanksgiving.
But turkey.
On my mind. So, he's dealing with all these different groups, and then the Cumans show up, and they're another nomadic warrior tribe.
The Cumans?
Cumans.
As in the spice?
Kind of, yeah. It's Cuman. cumin. And
Is it where the spice?
It might be. I don't know enough about the cumins. They're kind of like a Eastern Hungarian Tartar. They're like north of the Turks.
Tartar, that's a thing too.
That is. Cumins and the Tartars. They're the spiciest of the nomadic warriors.
Well, I mean, I know in general spices do come from the so if someone knows that specifically, feel free to comment.
Feel free.
But
cool.
I suspect that's where cumin comes from.
And the cumins get more famous later in history. They link up with the group called the Tartars and Tamerlane and all these other guys. So this is like a precursor to that. So the Byzantines,
cinnamons.
Yes, and then the cinnamons show up, and the
nutmegs.
sages and the nutmegs are the worst.
Crazy.
All lunatics. So you've got Comnenus dealing with this stuff.
Yeah.
And he starts to kind of get a handle on things throughout his reign. He became emperor in 1081. But not long before that, there was a huge shift in what is the Middle East, specifically in the Levant, or what we call the Holy Land. For the longest time, there was the Islamic Caliphate, and the Caliph is the religious and also government head of state. So what these groups were called the Fatimid. And they were very famous, very powerful group, the Fatimid.
Fatimid?
F-A-T. It's like fat and timid mixed together.
Fatima? Is that a...
Yep.
That's
a name.
That's a name.
Yep.
Is that related at all?
Yes, to the dynasty. So they've ruled for a couple of 100 years. They're out of Egypt. They're tough. They're warrior people, and they are in charge. But they're in decline.
Oh.
Then the Turks are on the rise, and these guys are the modern Huns. They're very similar to how the Mongols fight horse cavalry, or horse archers, light cavalry, very light infantry that's not a focus of theirs. They're very quick, moving all over the place. The Fatimid fight a little differently, but are also fairly lightly armored because desert.
Yeah.
This is not a great way to fight in heavy armor.
Oh, can you imagine getting sand in your armor?
Oh, because it's probably already heavy, and then it's sweaty.
Metal.
So then it's sweaty,
sand.
and then sand, so you get like a sandy, sweaty grit.
I mean, he'd be full body exfoliated.
Yeah, you come out smooth or raw. Just raw. Just.
It sounds like a curse. I hope you get sand in your armor.
That's a good one. That get sand in your joints, man. So the Fatimids, who were not timid,
All right, I didn't
and
think so.
they've butted. I mean, they seized Jerusalem in the 600s. So this has been out of Byzantine hands for a very, very long time. And then they collapse. Will start to collapse. They come back later, but they start to collapse here. And the Seljuk Turks come in, and these guys are led by a guy that he's got a couple different names. There's Saka. And the most common one is Chaka Bey. That's just what he's called.
Who's the guy from Land of the Lost?
That I don't know.
Shaka, I think.
Shaka. There's Shaka Zulu. He's very
Shaka
famous.
Zulu. No, there was a
Different
little
guy
in the TV series Land of the Lost where they fell into the middle of the earth and there were dinosaurs on there.
Yeah.
There was also a little monkey boy
God.
named I think his name was Shaka.
This
will not be on the test.
This will not be on the test. So this guy Chaka Bey is a conqueror. He is not a governor. He's a kind of a Attila the Hun type.
Okay.
He's a brutal fighter.
So do not picture a small monkey child.
No, do not. Picture a big,
Those at
tough
home.
guy on a horse who leads from the front and is really good at killing people. That's who this guy is.
Yeah.
So he conquers Jerusalem in 1071. Rules it with pretty iron fist, and he's still just conquering those. So he's running all over the place, conquering more things. In 1077, there's a rebellion in Jerusalem because they don't like him. And he goes back from where he's conquering and says, surrender or I'm going to kill every single person in the city.
Oh.
So they surrender, and he goes in, and he doesn't kill every single person in the city, but he kills 3,000 people.
Yikes.
And the only ones who are saved are the ones that hide in the Dome of the Rock.
After they surrender?
After they surrender. So this is not a nice guy. Okay.
I mean, I guess he kept his word.
Yeah, he didn't kill everybody. He's just
everyone.
But that's considered even in Muslim war practices at the time. That was a no-no. Like he gave his word that they would walk, and he broke it.
Right.
So he's not. He's like even contemporaries are like, he's a bad guy.
That is a bad
That's
thing
a
to
bad
do.
dude.
It's a bad
We
faith
do
argument.
not like him.
Well, it's hard to negotiate with somebody like that in the future.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you heard about this, well, I heard that you didn't kill the whole city, but you killed 3,000 of
They
them.
were under the impression they'd be okay.
When you said surrender,
Yeah.
we assumed
Right.
that we were
thought
done
that
with
would-
the conversation.
That would be. We were like, yeah, we surrendered
okay.
before you started. Even later on, Genghis Khan was like, you get to surrender. If you surrender, everybody's fine. If you don't surrender, I'm going to kill every single person.
All right, so
And
this
if they
guy,
surrendered, they surrendered. So this guy's just like,
Shaka,
don't
worse
care.
than Genghis Khan.
Worse than Genghis Khan in that way.
that one particular way.
particular way. He didn't have mountains of skulls piled up for him, but he did kill a bunch of his own people.
Oh, we got to talk about Genghis Khan sometime.
Well, we're gonna. He's a fascinating character, if a bit of a monster.
Mountains of skulls.
Mountains of skulls. That's on something from a fantasy novel. So, Alexius Comnenus is nervous about this guy.
Yeah, I would be too.
He's an unknown entity.
Yeah.
From this slaughter of his own people, and then also there's the Turks are raiding. They're raiders. They're not typically conquerors as well because they're nomads.
Okay.
So they come in, take what they want, smash what they don't, leave, and that's their. They've been doing this for 1,000 years under different names. This
It's
is
our thing. It's what we
their thing.
do.
They're good at it. They shepherd flocks of animals, and then they fight other nomads, and they just kind of. I mean, that's old school human culture,
Yeah.
that nomadic lifestyle, and they just got really good at that. Horses and bows and arrows and new styles of combat. So this is a problem.
Yeah.
And Comnenus is like, okay, so I got the Normans that I had to deal with, I got the Cumans, I got these other Turks, and now I've got these guys, and they conquered Jerusalem, and I'm supposed to kind of be like the middle guy, the midpoint between Europe and Jerusalem when pilgrims go to Jerusalem.
Okay.
Because during the Fatimid Caliphate, you could still go there. There were Christians in the city. There were Jews in the city. That was okay. Which is why, people are, how come we can't go pray? That would have caused a problem.
Not a direct translation, by the way.
That's all the voices at once. Is,
Oh, okay. Well, they all shout. Everyone keep
Everybody
it down.
shouts. It's a mess.
All right.
But this new guy, because he's a conqueror and not a governor, the roads become less protected and plagued by bandits, which are largely just his guys.
Yeah.
Just kind of run around doing whatever they want to do. And pilgrims start to get mugged on the way to pray.
It's not good.
This isn't great. Well, because he's trying to rebuild his empire at the time, Comnenus sends a letter to the Pope and says, hey, I'm fixing things, okay?
I know it looks bad.
And by this point, because this is 1095, so he is fixing stuff.
Okay.
The Byzantine Empire of this time is really different than when he took power. He's made big shifts.
He took power in
14 years earlier, 1081.
right. So 14 years.
So he's
doing
been doing some stuff. He's put down a lot of the raiders. He's not dealing with problems from the Normans. The Byzantine Empire is starting to look like a proper empire.
Right.
They're showing off how fabulously wealthy they are. They're very well educated. It's a very diverse culture. You've got Greeks, you've got Turks, you've got Hungarians. They have the Varangian Guard, which are his elite bodyguard, and they're Vikings. They're all Viking descendants. So that's his elite guard. The Vikings sailed all the way to Constantinople through the rivers, and they were like, you guys are terrifying and giant and really good fighters. Do you want to protect our emperor?
Sure.
And they're like, what's the catch? No catch. You get to kill people for him.
Oh.
Okay. Do we get paid? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Good
The
shit.
rule was if the emperor died and it wasn't their fault, that's a key factor, they got to carry as much out of the treasury as they could fit in their hands.
Oh, okay.
And the Varangian Guard never somehow ever turned against the emperor, ever. They were very loyal.
If you're consistent with your reward
I mean,
system,
there were some instances probably where they did, but it was really bad emperors because it's an empire. You've got good ones and bad ones.
Sure.
But for the most part, they didn't do what the Roman Praetorians started doing, running an iron fist, were in charge. They were just like, nope, who we gotta kill? Boop, 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 boop. Makes them sound dumber than they were.
was that a Viking you were impersonating?
Yeah, yep. That was a Viking. Yep. But they were these big, heavy armored guys with massive axes.
I'm a
and they
Viking.
just Viking. It was the dumb Vikings that moved.
That's what they would do too when they would axe you. They'd say Viking.
Viking. It's okay. I'm just Viking. I'm Vikinging.
It's Viking everywhere. Viking.
Just Vikinging. So he says, I've got soldiers, but I have other concerns. I could use some professional warriors to help beef up the garrison in Constantinople.
Sure.
It's a massive city with huge fortifications, like 15 miles of walls around this thing. It's huge. And I don't have enough to man this, deal with my stuff in Europe, deal with my stuff against the Turks, deal with the stuff in the middle of nowhere over here. I've got all these outlying settlements in modern-day Turkey that are under attack, and I'm fixing it. But I need some troops, like knights, professionals, guys who are good at fighting.
Guys who can wear armor in the desert.
Yes. Well, and for part of it, he's like, we're not going to Afghanistan.
All right.
We're going to the steppes where cavalry would be very useful.
Oh, sure.
And knights are trained for, at this time, knights had an extreme regimen of training. It was 14 years of like non-stop beating the snot out of stuff. You start at 7, and when you're 21, that's when you get to be a knight.
Huh.
You learn discipline and all these different techniques, and
Did
you never stop learning how to fight.
the code of chivalry then? Was that
Early days.
Okay.
It wasn't quite developed, but it was early days, and it was largely pushed by the church. At this time, and this was another part of the Council of Clermont, I'm glad you brought that up, was they had what was called the Truce of God.
Oh, okay.
And it was, stop killing each other, you're all Christians. Like,
I'm surprised we had to mention this.
I don't know why we're talking about this. You're all on the same side.
God, we have to put everything in writing.
Like, and they did. So that was a big part of this council. They're like, we've got problems with people paying for offices in the church, which is terrible.
Yep.
We have the people are being taken advantage of by local priests who are corrupt with the tithing. We have knights just going around killing each other or killing each other's like peasants, and they're the people they're supposed to look out for, and standing up in open rebellions, and we've got this chaos. Stop it.
At this point, we have a church. We have a Christianity in general.
Mm-hmm.
We have a pope.
Yep.
Do they have a printed Bible that everyone has access to? They were only the
Latin clergy gets the book,
and
even then, not all of them had a physical book.
It's hand printed, right? It's
handwritten. Yep.
Yeah.
The printing press wasn't around until the 1500s.
Okay, that's
so
right.
They couldn't mass produce it, and up until Martin Luther, it was illegal to have the Bible in any language other than Latin.
Oh.
That was a no-no. And typically, you weren't supposed to have it unless you were a priest.
I mean, that part actually makes a little sense to me. Like, at least we have it consistently in the one language.
Yep.
So people can't go, well, my interpretation
actually-
says you can kill people.
Well, nowadays we have 20,000 different versions of the Bible, I think, counting all the different translations.
Sure.
And they're all very, very different in a lot of ways, and especially very different than the original Aramaic writing, which they had to translate into Greek, which they then had to translate into Latin, and then they had to translate into...
Well,
it's very different.
Fortunately, today's modern Bible has caused very little problems.
Correct.
So
it is not. There have been no problems.
So Pope Keith Urban and Alexis
Urban
and coming in this,
and Alex the communist.
They're chatting. They're chatting.
He sends this letter. He says, "I need some guys." And I know you being the Pope, you have some sway. Maybe you can talk to some people. You know everybody.
Right? You're the Pope.
So the Pope decides...
The Pope's not going to come knocking on some king's door. And,
right.
Who's that?
I don't want to talk to him.
The Pope? I never heard of him.
Yeah, right. And the Pope doesn't knock on your door. You come to his house.
Oh, that's true.
You know. So he has this scheduled meeting, and rumor has gotten out about this letter from Alexius that the Holy Land is on fire.
Oh,
there's Turks just killing pilgrims. They're just killing everybody.
So people are taking
this is
kind of the message from the letter?
Kind of.
Okay.
Because, like, what's happened is the guys who are coming back who were pilgrims and got beat up, they start telling people, I got mugged. My cousin got murdered. The Turks are running wild. Nobody's doing anything to fix it. And they're like, this aggression will not stand.
As we know as well, bad news travels way faster.
Way faster. Yeah. So yeah, the Pope, by the time he has scheduled this meeting, it was in a much smaller church, and he gets there and there's a crowd of thousands of people.
Yikes.
He's like,
This could have been
this
an
was
email.
supposed to be the local priests, maybe, and the bishops from surrounding areas, and some cardinals, like higher ups in the church.
Mm-hmm.
And there are peasants and knights and hermits, and all these people are here.
They told the hermits
The
too?
hermits even know.
Wow.
And they have a hermit network. And then you tell a crab, and he tells the other.
Yeah,
Okay, they tell them all.
That doesn't sound true.
No, it's not right.
No, that sounds
But
true.
the hermits don't have a way of communicating, but somehow they knew. Some of them at least knew.
crazy.
One in particular knew, and I will mention him in a second.
Okay.
So there's this huge gatherings of thousands of people. He's like, I picked the biggest church.
I would have worn a taller hat.
He's got a big one.
I would have worn a taller one.
So a huge chunk of the crowd has to stay outside. So like it started out at this one church, then they had to put it in a different church. It's in this much larger building, which is a fairly big. Churches were usually the biggest building in America.
Yeah.
You spend a lot of money on the stone, putting
Like a
it up,
cathedral
so everybody
kind of
could
deal?
see where it was. Yeah, and this isn't quite like, it's not like Notre Dame big, but it's a big building.
But not big enough for thousands of
Not
people.
that big. So he goes in and he's doing his speech. And he talks about how we have to be better Christians. And that means stop selling offices
Do the
for money.
things, yeah.
Stop murdering each other. This is in the Bible like
good,
a
yeah.
lot.
It's on the top 10 list.
It's on the top 10 list. It's every time Jesus like opened his mouth, he was like, don't be a dick and like start killing each other. That's like his core thing. Just
Paraphrasing that.
be nicer to each other
Yeah.
and be kind and generous. Not with your sword. Don't be generous with your sword.
I'm being generous. I gave everyone a little taste.
And they're like, but what if they're different than us? Did I stutter? Like, no stabbing anybody. Like, well, what if they stab you? Let them start. Just
well, that's the turn the
stop.
other cheek thing.
Turn
right?
the other cheek. Like, don't go out and be violent, especially not like you're my flock. You don't see sheep just murdering each other.
Yeah.
Stop it.
He's waiting. You give him some swords, though.
You
Those
give
sheep
sheep
will
some
go crazy.
swords, they might kill each other. They do butt heads.
Yeah.
So he's talking about all these things, and then he talks about how it is all of Christendom's responsibility to protect each other, but also the Christians in other parts of the world. And he mentions Jerusalem.
Well,
And he says, and we need to unite to protect these people in our holy city. Now, this isn't...
I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop.
And then the crowd goes nuts and focuses on that.
Oh.
We need to take back our city, our symbol, our holy land. It's ours.
Boy, it's hard to control a mob of people.
And it blows up like a firestorm. The people outside are screaming so loud. The church is practically shaking. Everybody's clamoring for this, and they demand a crusade to take back the Holy Land, which, by the way, they haven't had any control of ever as Europeans. The Romans controlled it until the 600s and lost it. So it's not theirs. This is communal property. And it was taken by a Muslim faction from another Muslim faction. And it's not like they're killing every Christian, but they're demanding this. And the Pope goes, oh crap. Like, this is not exactly what I wanted.
That's not what he wanted. No.
But he sees this as an opportunity to use the truce of God and instill that of, best way to keep Christian soldiers from killing Christian soldiers is to make them kill not Christian soldiers.
I guess that's a way.
So it's very much similar to the conquistadors being sent out west to kill non-people because they weren't Christians by Alexander VI, which was way worse because they just blanket said they don't count as people. He was just like, yeah, go do this thing. And all you Normans who were causing problems with the Byzantines, you can go too. And everybody can go and fight and take the Holy Land. And then he sees this also as like an opportunity for the church to finally rule Jerusalem.
Okay.
It's a proper Christian like kingdom. It could be its own thing. He sees this kind of blow up. Like he lets the mob kind of guide him.
I was going to say, I thought you said this Pope wasn't that bad. He was doing okay
at
up to
the
here.
start. Now we see he gets caught up in this fervor,
Now,
and he can't control the mob, but he can, because that's the problem too. Is he's mentioned this, all of the rumors have hit, and he can only direct it. He doesn't have a lot to say, because if he doesn't do anything, look what happens when you just leave a mob and you don't tell them what to do. They do their own thing.
Yeah. So now this has come up, kind of a similar scenario has come up multiple times, where you train. I'm not talking about a mob, but the other soldiers. Then you train these people to be war machines, and then at some point, like, well, now I have these war machines, but I have no reason to use them. I gotta point them somewhere. So I can't you can't de-escalate them.
Nope, you can't turn it off. It's
be a good idea to figure that one out. How
well,
to de-escalate.
Yeah, because that's a problem we deal with nowadays. As a veteran, I have PTSD from my time in the Army, and I have a lot of problems dealing with stuff. And my situation was not the worst case scenario. I've seen guys that have dealt with way worse stuff than I have, and people are like, just deal with it. People within the military even are like, just deal with it. And then you have increased murder rates, a crazy high number of suicides, substance abuse, all kinds of stuff. So imagine a world where that still exists, but instead of you shot a guy 50 yards away, you put your sword through him.
Yeah.
And you've been doing this for decades.
And this probably before any sort of mental therapy.
There's zero mental therapy.
By the way, to help Will, a gentle stroking on the arm.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
It works for me.
Gentle touch.
I don't know if that helps. Makes me feel more comfortable, though.
Well, human contact's good for you. We're social creatures. It's good. It's good.
Oh.
A hug is great. Yeah. But these are not huggers.
No.
If a knight is hugging you, it's probably so he can put his blade
A little closer.
I mean, there was like camaraderie, but it was like, good job, bro, good job. We murdered those peasants. So you've got, like you said.
I believe they call that toxic masculinity.
This is, yes. So there's good masculinity.
Sure.
Totally. But I gotta beat my problems to death is not, that's not good masculinity. Think like.
Dude, I think we're currently trying to do good masculinity.
This,
well done, guys.
yes, we're doing better.
Good for us.
Good job.
It's about time us white boys got something on the board.
That's right.
Good job.
Look, we've got all of this. It seems like all of our history. So that I'm talking about is white guy did a jerk thing. White guy did a jerk thing. That could, yep, and there it is. Maybe don't be a jerk.
There we go. Yes, we're here.
Positive masculinity.
We're in the future to look back at all the white guys in history and go, I don't know what they're.
I don't know, man. We're better. We're better than that. We don't have slaves.
We learn? We learn.
We don't have slaves. We don't tell entire continents they don't count as people because they're different. I mean, we still have people like that.
Sure.
But they're dying out, so that's good.
All
Keep
right.
it up. Keep it up, people.
Slowly but surely.
So it's because masculinity is okay. Toxic, bad. Just like femininity, it's good. Toxic femininity, bad.
Unless it's Britney Spears' song "Toxic."
Toxic, that's
which
good.
is excellent.
That is excellent. But I think it's about a guy.
Might be. Probably.
I'm pretty sure it's about a guy. Anyway, let's ask her.
You're
Brittany, come on our show.
You're
You're toxic.
You're toxic, but you can't get enough of them.
Ooh.
We could dig deeper into that.
We could dig
on a
into
different
that.
podcast.
I think that's why she just recently got out of her conservatorship.
Oh, toxic was about her dad.
Oh God, no, because it's about having
I
physical relations.
I don't know.
Who knows?
I'm just guessing. I'm stabbing in the dark here.
It's all bad. It's all bad. But anyway, so there's this problem with, and that really is a problem. The toxic masculinity. That's a great way of covering what this is.
Yeah.
Is because, like I said, these guys have been trained. The knights have been trained since they were 7.
Yeah.
Sometimes younger, sometimes a little later, but they were trained from a young age. You start as a page, basically standing there with the bowl so your dad can wash his hands.
Yep.
Or
and you get the little haircut.
Yep, you get the stupid
Page boy haircut.
stupid He-Man haircut.
Yeah. Well, they were using daggers. Come on.
Yeah, that's just, I can see now. That's it. And that was literally just so the helmet it didn't get in your hair. That was it. This doesn't matter. They apparently hadn't figured out if you get it long enough, you can just...
Or you get old enough and it just goes away by itself.
It does. Yeah, see, older knights had it better. They didn't have to worry about it. But, so you've got this warrior culture. You can try to dress it up as much as you want and say, like, oh, well, no, they were holy warriors. They were killers.
Self-defense and protecting the city.
Right. But self-defense always relies on the ability to put down an enemy.
Yeah.
And make sure it doesn't get back up.
Yeah.
Like, that is it. It is violence. So, and I've had this talk many, many times. They're like, oh, well, soldiers are all about defense. Yup. by shooting the other thing so it stops being a threat. I mean, if I don't have to shoot something to make it not be a threat,
that is
yay.
defense.
But that is a soldier's job, is to kill something. And if you're not square with that, don't be a soldier. Met somebody in the military once who was like that. I was like, I think the Army's too violent. I was like,
You've
what?
chosen the wrong.
You've chosen the wrong profession. I'm like, I can say, like, don't collateral damage. That's bad. But like, just your job is at the end of the day, shoot somebody.
It's like a casino owner say, I'm not big into gambling.
Or
I like card playing, but I don't like
a prohibitionist bartender.
Yeah.
I hate alcohol. It's sinful. It's like, line of work, man. So anyway, the Pope sees this as like a win-win. The mob is going crazy, so he can't handle that.
Yeah.
Okay, the mob is like, once a mob goes, you go with the mob enough to kind of guide it. You don't try to break it up.
Yeah.
The best thing he could have done would be to try to stop it, but this is years and years of pent-up stuff going on.
So this didn't happen like on a day.
This wasn't just one day, but it was, because they've got these hermits coming back, you've got these pilgrims coming back, all telling bad stories about this. Ever since the Seljuk Turks took over Jerusalem, it's been worse.
Yeah.
Well, the longer a rumor goes, it gets worse.
Yeah.
And we don't have television, we don't have the radio, we don't even have mail. So you've just got word of mouth.
Word of mouth, yeah.
And, ironically, the game of telephone,
Yeah.
that's not a thing, but the concept is, I tell you this, you tell him that. I heard this guy that he just got. Did you hear that? Did you hear that? I mean, and we have this today, even with the internet. We could see an idea get blown way out of proportion.
People in general hear the things they want to hear.
Exactly.
As well, so, yes.
So you've got this echo chamber on a continental scale.
Yeah.
Where and these are foreign people. They don't know what it's like over there. The majority of the people that are starting to respond have never left their town, let alone gone to the Middle East, let alone met a Turk. So they just think they're devils and demons.
Yeah.
And they start thinking about stories like when Attila the Hun came and he drank the blood of children, and they're telling all of these nightmarish, not necessarily even remotely true stories, completely ignoring the fact that Christians did the exact same thing. They're killing each other left and right. It's not like, oh, well, we're pacifists and they're just murdering us. It's, they're just murdering us when we weren't murdering them. So it's not fair.
It's not fair.
It's not fair. So this has built this huge, just furor up where the peasants, the people are going crazy. It's not just peasants, just the people in the crowd are going nuts. The warrior caste is sitting there like, yeah, me stab.
Me fix mob.
Me handle. And they would. If the Pope had said kill them,
Yeah.
they probably would have. And then he's also got his own, papal guard or whatever. But these guys are also like, we gotta make sense. Because, and the wheels start to spin in the heads of all of these, nobles who are present. Because there's princes there. There's these famous guys. There was this guy named Godfrey of, I think it's pronounced Bouillon, but it looks like Bouillon, but it's actually, it's like Bouillon.
They make great soup.
And he was this guy stuck out in the crowd. He was over 6 feet tall, which at the time, very rare.
Sure.
Golden hair, built like a brick wall.
Sounds like
giant dude. Yeah.
Sounds like a certain somebody on a history show.
Somebody. And he's just kind of standing back, and he, like I said, he stands out, and he's a warrior, and kind of this symbol, how good you could get as a Christian knight. He's wealthy, he's powerful, he's considered honorable and decent, and he's this is a man's man, and actually kind of like the positive masculinity, not just let's just kill everybody. He's like, I could do something with this.
Oh.
Because I've got some land.
Yes.
But I could have more land.
Oh.
We could do something with it. And then you see all these lords that are kind of lesser nobles, but they're fighters, going, I could do something with this. We could carve out a kingdom. And you get the beginning of this idea. And the Pope was just like, yeah, we'll just go take the city back and give it to the Pope, maybe.
Or, on the other hand,
that's what I want.
And once we get there,
the Pope's thinking that. And then the knights are all going, yeah, we're going to do that.
Sure. We'll send it to you via mail.
we'll give you email confirmation when we were taking it.
We got the land.
Yep.
We're gonna
Now,
keep it here.
They say we've got this land. If you could send us $17 million though to help us cover the initial funding, then we can pay you back $18 million.
It's tricky to send somebody else to take over land and then to have them
and
give
then
it
say,
to you.
now give me.
Thank you for
give
that.
me. And I don't think it's ever gone well where people have done that.
It
It's
doesn't
like,
seem
you
like
can
a
conquer
good
that
plan.
for me. Good call.
Thank you.
Nope. We just talked about this last week. They sent Cortez, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm not listening to anybody. I'm taking this."
Yeah.
Yoink.
It's tough once you get the thing.
Yeah.
To give it up.
Luckily, he actually like, gave it back. But I mean, not luckily for the locals, but luckily for Spain, they're like, there's a lot more.
Need a lot more Charlie Buckets in the world. Who would, even though they got the gobstopper, they still gave it back.
They gave it back, even after they got yelled at
Yeah,
and
that's right.
treated mean.
That's
and
right.
He still was like, "I'm sorry, and I
We
didn't."
need more Charlie Buckets in the world.
Yep. And he wasn't told to give it back.
Boy.
He just did. It's a good kid. Good kid. Good masculinity.
That's right.
Not toxic. Good masculinity.
Be a Charlie
accountable. Be a Charlie Bucket. Be a mensch. Not
Don't be a Mike
douche.
TV.
Never be a Mike TV.
It was way off.
Way off. There was none of those things then. So, the Pope sees this going on, and he's like, "Yo, Crusade! I don't want to go."
Now, were there Crusades before this?
This is the very first.
This is the first
This is
Crusade.
the first
Did they have a
Crusade.
word? They had a word for it, right?
I mean, the concept of a holy war.
Okay.
But they hadn't really had one.
Oh, okay.
Like, not at this scale of what we're going to talk about. Because you have all of these guys, they're considered princes of the church. Bishops, cardinals. These guys are wealthy, and half of them are warriors. They're not, the modern day cardinal, where they're 1,000 years old, sitting on a chair. Yeah, you go there.
Mumbling something in Latin.
These guys had to go places and do stuff.
Oh, okay.
You're riding across country, going on talking to people, and sometimes somebody wants to take your land, so you got to punch them in the face. So there's a very fascinating, and one of the not monsters of the Crusade, fascinating guy there. His name is Adhemar de Montel. He's also called Adhemar de la Puy, which is the name of the church area that he was in charge of. Monteil is the Monteil, or Monteil. I don't speak enough French, I should ask. I should have called my brother. How do I pronounce this? So Adhemar is just how I remember. Adhemar is his first name. He is a bishop, and he is a warrior, and he's known for these things. And he's a fan of this idea, and he is chosen by the Pope to be his representative on this endeavor. So the Pope sparks the idea.
Yeah.
Whether it's fully
Kind of
intentional or
accidentally, though?
not. Kind of.
So the Crusades kind of just started
kind of
accidentally.
Kind of an accident. It was kind of an accident because all the emperor wanted was a few hundred well-trained soldiers. That was it.
Just,
That's all he wanted.
All right.
And the Pope was like, "I got this meeting. I'll bring this up at the meeting.
Okay, we'll talk about that.
Talk about it then." And it's like going to city council and having this thing to talk about, the roads or something, and everybody in the town shows up to bitch about something completely different, or like the one tiny item on the docket that we're maybe not going to talk much. We're like, "Oh well, we were going to cut down this tree." You can't cut down that tree, and everybody's mad.
I know that sensation all too well, by the way.
Yes, and that's why I figured you could identify with that really well. You're trying to have this, and then it just blows up, and then you're like, "Okay, let's talk about the tree."
Okay.
Wow, I didn't realize. But the Pope takes advantage of the situation, and what's neat is this is very well documented. There was this guy named Fouché of Chartres.
Okay.
French is so complicated, and he detailed the speech. He was a priest, so he knew how to write. He didn't write it all down like, well, you're not sitting there, with the press badge.
Yeah.
He wrote it down years later to try to commemorate exactly what happened, because he didn't realize it was going to be that big of a deal.
No one did, apparently.
They're like, okay, this is a lot. This is a lot for a council meeting, and this was a synod or synod, so it was just supposed to be a meeting of church leaders.
Yeah,
That was it. It kind of blew up because of the word of mouth about he's going to talk about what's happening in Jerusalem, and we're going to fight the devil. Is how it turns into, and so he writes it down that. So it started out, we just talked about business as usual. Then during the court, and this is all oratory. It's just the Pope talking. And he gives this speech that starts a fire, basically. And he goes on
the
about...
Pope does, or the
Pope? The Pope.
Okay.
This guy's just writing it down.
Okay,
This poor guy is just like an historian. He's just a perfectly decent... He's like a decent priest who just... He's like one of the notary types. He writes down stuff. He does illuminations in the side of the books. He's a straight arrow, good priest. And he's just writing this down. He's like, so he comes in, he's talking about the things that we need to do. We need to be better Christians, but we need to be better Christians abroad too. And we have enemies of all Christendom. This is a relatively newly pushed concept.
Yeah.
You know, we've got all these kingdoms that are starting to form now. You know, you've got England that has just kind of become a kingdom.
Yep.
You've got France, which is starting to solidify as a kingdom. You have the German principalities that have become a kingdom. You have Italy is just a mess. And it stays that way for a very long time. It's not like a whole country, I think, until the 1800s.
Oh, really?
I think Italy is just city-states and small kingdoms.
Oh.
But you have all these growing kingdoms there. You have to get the Kingdom of Sicily, which is the Normans.
Mm-hmm.
You have the principalities and city-states of Venice, Milan, Genoa. They are like tons of cash, and they have fighting people starting to form into little groups. You've got Hungary becoming kind of this solid state. And then you have the Byzantine Empire. So they're like, what if we did a thing? And you got all these smaller states. What if we focused all these energies? Now we've got these soldiers and stuff. We're starting to figure out borders and stuff like that. And the Pope's not wanting that to go back into chaos. He doesn't want more wars here.
Yeah.
So we'll take all these elite killers who have already shown that they just kind of get together and conquer stuff. Because he's like, okay, 30 years ago, William sailed from Normandy to England and just went, mine.
Why can't we do the same thing?
So rather than have them do it to each other,
Yep.
let's go over there.
Got it.
And he's also
Makes
hoping...
sense. On paper, it looks good.
Yeah, and he's also hoping they can take that for the church.
Yeah.
They can take Jerusalem and make that church property. This is ours. We'll control all the temples. And we'll drive out the infidel. Which is another thing nowadays is commonly used as like a Muslim word of infidel. That's an English word.
Oh, okay.
That is not... Like, it just means an unbeliever. And somebody who doesn't share your beliefs. So an infidel, I'm technically an infidel to a gajillion people.
Yeah.
To plenty of people, you're an infidel.
Sure.
And I've seen people try to wear like a shirt that says infidel to try to be like, yeah, I don't believe what Muslims believe. And it's like, no, that just means you don't believe in
something
thing.
that
Maybe
someone
you're
else does.
If you, a nihilist would
Sure.
be a truest infidel.
Until-
You are an
everything.
unbeliever of everything. You believe in nothing, Lebowski. Like, super infidel. That's it. So I always think that that's funny when these dummies walk around, I'm an infidel. Like,
Oh, I get it. Yeah, yeah.
but I'm a Christian. Well, then you're not an infidel. You're just being a jerk. You're being a provocative jerk.
I found there's a fine line between infidel and jerk.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But if you got to say, I'm an infidel because you're trying to make somebody mad,
Yeah.
then you're a jerk. Then you're a jerk. So they start saying, we got to fight the infidel. We got to go do this. Well, the warriors go, this is going to take some time.
Those are big countries, fellas.
We got to get soldiers. We have to have lines of supply. We have to have coin.
Yeah.
We have to talk about how long it's going to take because we're going from France through all of Europe to Constantinople and then down because sea travel is a stupid idea at this time. The boats are basically a big rowboat with no oars and one sail and hope you get there. Plus, the Mediterranean is very stormy along the coasts in different regions, and the corsairs at this time are like, there's North African pirates. They're called the Barbary Corsairs, generally.
Yeah.
There wasn't like a communal group, but that was just the term they gave it. And they're pirates, and they'd row along in galleys.
Do the pirate thing.
And they'd just smash these smaller ships and they'd steal the stuff. So sea travel's not great. It also is hard to move horses and guys who don't swim in heavy armor.
It's hard to,
It's just...
especially for all three of those things.
They don't want to do it. It's faster, but it's much riskier. As opposed to slower, but you know where everybody is and you know where everything is. They also have to plan out, okay, I'm going to march my army from here through this other guy's land.
Yeah.
Through this other guy's land.
You just
Through
excuse
this
us.
other guy. Yeah.
Pardon.
Yeah, and you can't do the Wisconsin ope. That's not a thing yet.
Yeah.
You can't ope your way through it
Just gotta-
when you have thousands of armed people. So they're like, okay, well, we got to send letters out to all these nobles and lords and
Sure.
towns.
Yeah.
And then also you can't have like 50,000 people go to a town.
No, we don't have no hotel rooms.
They don't, right? So you don't have a place to put the soldiers. You don't have food.
Yeah.
And most farming is subsistence farming. It's not like us nowadays where it's like, yeah, we have enough food in America to feed the whole world, which is pretty cool if we wanted to.
Sure.
And
We don't want to.
We don't want to, though.
We don't care.
And
to.
we could do that. I have the space of my backyard.
Yeah.
And I filled it with food. And that's it. I have a goat.
I'll go for me and my family.
My family.
I wasn't expecting yes.
Yeah.
Much
I
less
got
50,000.
Yes, and yeah, they're like, oh, there's lots of you.
Oh, jeez.
So the lords and knights and the heads of the church, like Adamar, he gets together with Godfrey, the Golden is what he's also called.
No,
Godfrey the Golden.
Godfrey the Golden.
He gets together with Baldwin of Bologna.
Oh.
Baldwin of Bologna. It's literally
Baldwin of Bologna.
Bologna. B-O is Boulogne, but G-N-E. So I always call him Baldwin of Bologna. Baldwin of Bolognese. He's a sauce. And Baldwin is another great warrior who's got a plan. He's got ideas. He's got goals. This guy's got big plans. And they're very capable men, and they all get together and like, okay, so how do we do this right?
Yeah.
However, in the crowd was a man named Peter, and he was known throughout history as Peter the Hermit. And he wore a burlap sack, and that was it.
Hey.
Carried a stick. And he could talk. Like, he fired up these people looking like this crazy, the hermit. He's a hermit. He's got hermit hair and hermit beard.
Yeah, looks like me.
The hermit eyes. Your beard's not crazy enough and your hair's not up
We'll get
enough.
there, yeah.
He's just a crazy looking dude. And he decides, we're going now.
Well,
So he leaves from there with people to go to war. And starts gathering an army.
and he was just a really good talker?
He's just a good talker. He didn't wear shoes. He didn't have pants. He wore a burlap sack.
Was he doing like the look at me, I got nothing to gain, I'm a peasant just like you kind of deal.
He thought this was God's will.
Yeah.
He's a lunatic. He was like, we are going to walk there and we are going to march there and the walls are going to collapse before us like Jericho.
Yep.
And we are going to march in and we're going to bathe in the blood of the infidel because that's what Jesus Christ, the pseudo hippie, wants us to do.
So that's some good talk. And he has like the piety of looking,
And at this time, hermits were considered respectable, holy people.
Yeah.
It's like, they didn't go, well, you got to be crazy to go live in a cave and live off mushrooms. They're like, he's very devout. He knows the faith, but he's an extremist. So he takes, the numbers are something between 10 and 20,000 people, marches them through all the way from France, through like Germany, through parts of Hungary, and then into Constantinople.
Now, while he's doing this, he's no longer hermiting, right? Is he? So when they get
He
somewhere,
literally rode a donkey the whole way.
and then like when they camp, he's like, I'm gonna go in that shrub and sit in the shrub.
Well, he's was shrub sitting probably, but no, I mean he wasn't like living in a cave while he's doing it. But he wasn't like living like a king. He wasn't traveling any differently. He didn't have a sword. He didn't have a weapon. The only trained soldiers that he had, I can only remember one of their names, was literally named Walter the Penniless. He was a very skilled knight, but he didn't have any money. He had armor and a sword and a shield, and he was a very good fighter, but he didn't have any land, he didn't have any clout. And he was like, I believe this guy. Also, he doesn't seem to have any soldiers, he could use some help. He had a handful of guys like this. They're the only ones who know what they're doing. The rest are peasants with sticks and stones and bad attitudes.
but a lot of them.
And a lot of them.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they also have a lot of bias and bigotry against them. So as they're marching, they are what's called the massacres of the Rhineland.
Oh.
Where anytime they found a Jewish settlement, they killed every single person they found. Once again, anytime anybody wants to do anything bad to anybody else, they also throw the Jews in.
Wait, what?
I don't get it at all.
We'll figure that out.
Part of this is because they blame the Jewish Pharisees for killing Jesus, completely ignoring the fact that Jesus was himself a Jew.
And wanted them to, frankly.
Wanted them to. He kind of defeats the whole purpose of the sacrifice if you don't get sacrificed.
Yeah.
Kind of like why, Judas isn't really the villain, because without Judas, Jesus doesn't die.
Yeah.
Prophecy doesn't happen.
Check out Jesus Christ Superstar. It delves into that.
It's pretty awesome.
Anyway.
So, they create this path of destruction, basically. There are riots in every town they stop in because they haven't made any plans. They get to Constantinople and the emperor's like, what the hell is this?
Not what we
I
discussed.
asked for 500 trained soldiers. You sent me 20,000 crazy peasants. They're burning my towns. They're killing the Jews who are welcome in my city.
Where's that letter I wrote? I want to...
He literally, as fast as he can,
That letter I wrote.
he throws them all on boats and sends them across the Bosphorus Strait. He's just like, I don't want to deal with this crap.
Oh.
And they last about a week
On a boat.
before the Turks find them.
Oh.
They send it because the Bosphorus isn't that long. Nowadays they have a bridge across it.
Oh, okay.
It's smaller than the Mackinac
So
Bridge.
they
but
send him off on the...
he sends Peter and his army off, and they don't have cavalry. They don't have weapons. They have some. They have sticks. They have some padded clothing.
So
they might
easy
have
to put
some
on a boat.
armor. And they go off in several boats to
Yeah,
get thousands
sure.
of people
Not a
across.
boat, but yes.
But they get across, they start marching, and the Turks find them. And it's not even their main army. And they annihilate them. I think Peter survived, but all his, Walter the Penniless died a hero doing a rearguard action to try to protect the peasants as they just ran. Because the Turks they do this thing where they surround you with horse archers and they just lay into you. Or they ride towards and shoot with horse archers and then they run away.
And if they know what they're doing and you're peasants, you don't know yet.
And you have no idea. This is like shooting fish in a barrel.
Yeah.
They also caught him in a pass.
Oh.
In a ravine, actually. So the Turks are just like, choop, 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 throw rocks, do whatever they want.
You know what?
And then they send cavalry with lances to the front of the column and just run through it. And it is just a slaughter. It's like thousands died.
And all the while, the people dying are probably like, this is righteous.
Yes, we're fighting for Jesus. And
This
they
is a good...
just die. And the Turks like, who are the crazy peasants?
What is happening?
I don't know what's going on. Why? And some of them are even like, they're trying to fight us still. They don't have weapons, really. This is an army. It's very clearly an army, but it's missing some very key components, weapons and armor. Meanwhile, Adamar and his guys get together and they're like, yeah, we're going to do it the right way. They show up and it gives the emperor a completely different respect. He's like, oh, soldiers. And they're like, yeah, we don't work for you.
Oh.
And they all kind of give him the finger and decide, we're not doing what you asked us to do. We're doing this for the Pope and for God. And they all start to coalesce on the other side of the river. And rather than just go, one little army rides across and does its own thing, they wait for each other. And then they create this mailed fist of just kind of destruction and just ride through chunks of Turkey and then start moving south. And they conquer everything along the way.
That's how you do it in the game Risk.
And that's how that is. Yep. Powder keg, and then, and that's what they do. And that's what they do right. But what ends up happening is the Crusades are the direct result of this. And there are many Crusades. I think there are 7 official. The total deaths of the Crusades are immeasurable. The amount of atrocities committed are countless. In one siege alone, Richard the Lionheart escorted 2,000 to 3,000 Muslim captives outside of the city of Damascus, and in front of the opposing army to put fear into them, had all of their throats cut. Every single one of them, defenseless. Men, women, children, didn't care. Then his men ripped the bodies open looking for hidden treasures. Crusader knights rode around with the heads of their defeated enemies on their saddles, just like, we call it barbaric, that the Genghis Khan did things like that. Yeah. There are stories in Muslim histories of Christian soldiers killing and roasting children. And then it's not like the Muslims were all better. And to say Muslim and Christian does not mean every at the time. It's just these combating forces.
Right.
And blood counts against, causes more bloodshed.
Yes.
So the Christians, they just go all out and kill everything they see. And then the Turks do the exact same thing. And then you have the King's Crusade, which is Richard the Lionheart and all these other kings leading their army, versus Saladin, and he's this very famous, very heroic character, and that builds. And then you have more Crusades after that that just causes more and more bloodshed, and it's all because of this little
one thing.
meeting. And it all started with the best of intentions.
Whoops.
And it started, it's don't be a bad Christian. So go murder everybody, and it just explodes.
Well, talk about getting the wrong message.
So we can talk about all of the other Crusades, but that is
We'll save that
hours
for
of
another
stuff,
time.
And we're
out of time.
the last grains of sand,
And I
and
think
managed
we-
to get all of the impact done.
We got all the things we needed. Excellent. Well done. I learned a lot.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to some history moment. We should probably start plucking out happy moments.
That brings us to next week's subject.
Oh boy.
Yes.
So now next week, because Thanksgiving on Thursday, we won't be doing this on Thursday. We'll be doing this on Wednesday, unless I change
Unless things happen.
plans.
Yep. We got because holidays things start to shift.
Yeah.
Totally.
So that'll be what we're discussing next week.
We are discussing Thespis of Icania?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or
Icaria?
Let me double check this. I think it's Icaria.
Icaria.
I can't read your writing.
Icaria.
Yes.
Icaria.
Thespis of Icaria. And that is all the way back in 534 BC. And we're going to talk about this guy, Thespis, who's not a warrior. He is not a king. He's not a murderer. There's no war, death, or murder in anything that he did.
Don't tell me anymore. I'm excited.
That's it. And it's still super interesting. There's no genocide.
Boy.
It's going to be a nice, happy, pre-Thanksgiving story time.
So tune in next week. Check out our YouTube channel, which is in the comments there.
Like all the videos, even if you don't watch them, like them.
Like them,
subscribe,
share them with other people. We'll be doing audio versions at some point, but you can also just turn the video on and not look at it. That's fine as well.
YouTube mostly runs in the background if you run it as an app.
True. So I think that's it That's it.
Yeah, that's it for our
show today. Thank you for being here.
Come in next Wednesday at the same time.
Same.
And if it changes, we'll let you all know.
Yep, our active viewer.
Yeah.
All right, talk to you later.
Bye, guys.
Bye.